Welcome back to Direct Selling Shift. I'm your host, Blake Mallon, and last week we had a very special, deeply emotional episode of Direct Selling Shift where we featured a final interview honoring Jessie Lee Ward. And if you missed last week's episode, I'm going to let you know right away. It was a very different kind of episode. Probably a different level of conversation than maybe you have ever heard or will ever hear in a podcast conversation. A few weeks ago, I had the honor of sitting down with Jessie Lee. For those of you that don't know her, she was an extraordinary human, not just a business maven, but someone who was in the middle of so courageously fighting and battling stage 4 colon cancer, and she openly talked about what she was in the middle of and how she was combating that horrible, horrible disease with us very openly in the conversation. And a few weeks after that dialogue, on September 16th, we lost Jessie Lee. And that loss has echoed throughout the entire direct selling community, not just her team, not just her company community, the entire channel and beyond. And it's because Jessie Lee was not just a role model. She really was a hero. She was an icon. She was a living legend in the eyes of so many people throughout the direct selling industry. To me, she was a friend. She was a business partner and a work colleague I've worked very closely with for 4 years now. And more so than just the business front, to me, Jessie Lee, she really was a beautiful, shining example of someone who discovered her purpose. And you could see it in how she lived it out every single day to the absolute fullest. And in last week's conversation, we shared one of Jessie Lee's, what I believe was one of her final interviews in a very radically open, completely vulnerable dialogue where she, taps into business and what she's seen as shifts in this season in our channel. But way beyond that, really getting to the heart of her wisdom, her transformative insights on personal fulfillment, on meaningful impact, on what it means to leave a legacy that really can stand the test of time. I invite you, if you haven't had a chance to listen to the full episode, I highly suggest you go back to last week and really just open your heart, open your mind, approach it just free of any judgment. And I think if you do, you're going to find the conversation just absolutely and profoundly inspiring. And I do want to thank all of you who did listen and who did reach out. I will say the response that we have gotten through DSN, that I have gotten personally, has been absolutely overwhelming. So much love, so much gratitude, and obviously with all of that, a lot of mixed emotions for many of us that are still in shock, right? That are still going through our grieving process. But one thing is for sure, her light, her ripple, her legacy, it really is burning brighter than ever right now. I really believe the intention by which we put it out to honor her was received with open arms and open hearts. And I just want to say I thank you for that and for all of you that have been continuing to share it. This is a Shift Summary, which is a series where we do just solo episodes really designed to dive into key takeaways from our recent guest interviews and really drawing on the inspiration and transferring that into actionable insights to propel you and your business forward. That's the mission of Direct Selling Shift and why we're all here together. So they're not meant to replace the full conversations. They're really meant to distill it down, allow us to reflect and review and use it to move forward. So my mission today is to just share some of the key shifts, some of the Blake's takes, so to speak, from my conversation with Jessie Lee. 5 shifts that come to mind in my conversation with Jessie Lee. Starting with shift number 1, really has to do with resilience. Resilience and how it begins with a mindset. And there's no question, as entrepreneurs, we all face challenges, right? We all go through the entrepreneur roller coaster. There are highs, there are lows, there are peaks, there are valleys, and all of that is the journey of being an entrepreneur, especially in the direct selling space. But if there's one thing that hit so hard in our conversation with Jessie Lee is as she was talking about what she was going through with her health, how back in February of this year, she thought she was in the best shape, the best health of her life. I mean, she had just transformed her body. She was dialing in her nutrition. She looked great. She felt great. And she got inspired by reading Life Force by Tony Robbins and went and got a Gallery test and an MRI, only to get the results back without any symptoms, without any signs of stage 4 colon cancer. And immediately seeking the best advice that she could find. You know, some of the top in that field as doctors tell her that she probably wouldn't make it till October. And to have that news and to watch the mindset that Jessie Lee applied to fighting for her life. And I can say I have never met or seen or experienced someone who fought harder for her life than I personally witnessed with Jessie Lee over the course of this year since February. And to hear that story of really what a real challenge is, shifts a perspective, gives us a frame of reference. And in my opinion, shows us, right, how we can show up with the right mindset to overcome whatever is put in front of us in our business and our life every single day. And a total side note, because she did mention this in our conversation, and if you haven't and you have the means to go get tested, go get that Gallery test that Jessie Lee referred us to. Go get an MRI if it's within your reach, because you just never know. And I think that's a message that Jessie Lee would want us to pass on as a side note. The second shift really has to do with what I'm going to call the whole you. And I never really thought about this until the conversation with JL, where she really challenged us to harness every aspect of ourself to unlock our potential. And the context of this conversation came when I asked her, because I was genuinely curious if she knew that her boss Lee persona was just so different than the Jessie Lee that I worked with on a day-to-day. And for those of you that had a chance to get to know her, right, Jessie Lee that you met, it was a different energy, a different type of person than the boss Lee that you see online or on her TikTok or on her Instagram. And I was just curious if that was strategic or intentional, of which she laughed when I asked, and she said, absolutely, 100%. But more so, it was deeper than just a marketing strategy. Her boss Lee, she said, was her alter ego, and defined it as the part of herself that she would tap into in order to create the attraction and the leadership to both protect her from certain situations and to help her thrive in others. And I love the way that she explained it, how we all have different aspects of ourselves. This wasn't a Jessie Lee and Boss Lee thing. We all have different modes. For those of you that are parents, you maybe have a parent mode, a mom mode, or a dad mode that's different than your work mode or your business mode. Maybe that's different than your, spouse or husband or wife mode. And I was like, wow, what a shift in mindset of how do we tap in to the mode inside of us that's going to get the best result for our business, right? For our teams. And for Jessie Lee, she called it Boss Lee. But for you, right, it may have a nickname, it may not. It's about tapping into you in that competitive spirit, you in your desire mode, your ambition mode, your competitor mode when you need it in order to move forward. No, it's not about being fake. It's not about just marketing or creating a brand because it creates attraction. It's about tapping into the aspects that are you in order for you to thrive and go to your next level. What are those aspects of you that make you you? What do they look like? What do they sound like? What characteristics would you use to define those parts of you? And how do you tap into those aspects of you for your business in order to go to the next level? The whole you. Such an awesome concept. Thank you, Jessie Lee and Boss Lee. The third shift was really going from virtual to reality. This is combining online attraction with in-person connection. Now, for those that know Jessie Lee, she's a master at marketing. She had built a huge brand and huge following online that contributed a lot to her success. So it was super interesting in our conversation to see how deep she went, not just on social media marketing and content, but beyond that, getting to know people on a personal level. And she said this a couple different times in our conversation, and a challenge to all of you is getting to know your team on a real, deep, personal level. It's not just about transactions, it's about relationships, and how the greatest leaders and the greatest teams that stand the test of time have woven right into the fabric of that community, real relationships, real connection, really knowing who your team is as human beings, as people. And a step further, how those personal connections were really forged in person, in physical proximity, at events. So many times throughout our conversation, Jessie Lee kept going back to getting together like real in person, out from behind the Zoom screen, and how those two combinations, sure, online attraction, there's no doubt that social media, technology, Zoom, virtual, has allowed us now to reach more people than ever before, to have more attraction and conversations than ever before. But that shallow relationship and how we have to combine that attraction with in-person connection. Are we making it a priority to go beyond the transaction, beyond the Zoom screen, and really get to know your people? What makes them thrive? What do they want? What are their dreams, their goals, their aspirations? What are their fears? And are we getting out from behind just the online attraction and creating real community, real connection? The fourth shift was a personal question I asked to Jessie Lee because I see it as her superpower. And this has to do with really the art of seeing and speaking life into people. I've watched her do it over and over and over again, working with her through the years, how she can find individuals and really speak certainty, confidence, energy, believe more in them than sometimes they believe in themselves. And over time, that belief grows and these individuals thrive and flourish, and those words become a reality. So I asked her the question, I said, do you even recognize that as your superpower? And her answer was beautiful. She said, well, Blake, I see people for who they are. So my question for all of you listening right now is look at your team. Look at the members that you work with every single day. You know, if you ask yourself the question, what are their gifts? What are their strengths? What are their superpowers? We all have different gifts. They might be unique and different from yours. That's what makes community, and teams, is the diversity, is the variety. But we all have gifts. We all have unique talents. And how can you see what those gifts are in the people that you're working with? And beyond just stopping and recognizing, the magic Jessie Lee passed on to us is sharing. Telling those individuals that, yes, I see you. You are great at this. Taking the time to share the words, because we don't do that enough. And it doesn't matter who you are, where you are. That type of affirmation from people we look up to, it means something to everybody. And you have that power as a leader right now to give that energy, that belief to the people in your team. See them, recognize it, share it with them. So I thought that was a beautiful share of how she speaks life into people. And I can tell you, I've watched it turn from words into reality for so many. It works. And that's a shift we can all adapt into our business. And the last one I'll share, shift number 5 from the conversation. For me, it was the most important question I could ask her, and it's the question that's been replaying in my mind over and over again ever since I asked that question. And it was the question I asked, well, Jessie Lee, ever since she got diagnosed back in February with stage 4 cancer and told that her time was limited, I watched her double down on her work. I watched her do more, right? More podcasts, more conversations, more Zoom calls, more events, more travel, more. And I just asked her the question, why? And without any hesitation, she replied. She said, Blake, I do this not for the money. I do this because I love what I do. It's a passion. It's about impact. It's about legacy. And for me, that was such a beautiful thing because it doesn't hit harder or more true than being told you only have a certain amount of time and then doubling down on what you were already doing. Talk about a beautiful testimony of someone who discovered their purpose, tapped into their passion, loved what she did, so much so that even when time got put on a limit, It's what she continued to do even more because of the impact. And so my question for you listening to this, have you tapped into your purpose so deeply, your passion so deeply, and connected it to your business, your vehicle, your product, your service so deeply that if you were in a similar situation, you'd be doubling down because of the impact you can make and the legacy that you can leave? And ever since Jessie Lee passed, it has been inspiring to see the ripple of that impact in so many people. And I can't think of a more inspiring testimony to why we do what we do in this industry and the power that we have, not only for ourselves to tap into that energy and make that type of impact, but to share a platform where other people are able to do the same. So those are the shifts that I got from the conversation. I know there were so many, and there were so many others, but those were 5 that I wanted to share with all of you here today. So that's your challenge. Whatever challenge you're going through right now starts with a resilience and a mindset. Tap into the whole you. What aspects of you can you use right now to go to your next level? Virtual and reality, online attraction and personal connection. Build relationship, get out and create proximity. It creates energy, it moves people forward. See your team, speak gifts, right, into their life. And lastly, tap into what moves you, your purpose, your passion, and tie it to your vehicle. People follow people that are following their passion. So there's 5 shifts. Let's focus on those for this week. Make the shift and go back and listen to that full episode again. It's worth it. There's so many more. Feel free to share this with those that you feel will get value from it. Share it with those that are inspired by JL's story. And if you haven't listened to all of the other Direct Selling Shift episodes, definitely go back and listen to the pre-launch episodes. And our first guest interview with Darnell Self was absolute fire. And next week, I'm going to let you know right now, we got a really special guest. It's an individual that has been an entrepreneur in direct selling for over 2 decades. And get this, he has been the #1 ranked team in his legacy company for 17 years. I'm telling you, his wisdom is something that is going to help you go to the next level. The conversation is absolute fire, and that'll be live, a brand new guest interview coming on Monday. So make sure you follow the show, you set your reminders, and tune in on Monday, and I get to introduce you to an amazing individual. Until the next time, I challenge all of you to make the shift. The right shift at the right time can change everything. Thank you for listening. See you next week.